Whoops. What are some of the advantages? Certainly external validation. And basically this is what we get as CPAs, right? We get our CPA license and we get external validation. Also, this goes along with peer review. What we'll see is as we sort of go through the process of accreditation is who's actually making the decisions about whether or not a particular institution should be accredited. Requires continuous improvement. It looks at faculty. It looks at the learning of the students. It looks at recruiter confidence, and that's the CPAs, that's y'all, whether or not you want to hire our students or somebody else's students, whether or not the regulators should have confidence in our students, whether or not the public should have confidence in our students. So it all goes along with what we've been talking about over the last couple of days here. Keeping in mind that when you have regulators' confidence, and this, when we talk about accreditation, you have to realize that there are over 200 accrediting bodies that are sanctioned by the Commission on Higher Education. Very few of them are actually business related, or even fewer are accounting related, but basically there are any number of them. Nursing has its own accrediting agencies. Engineering has its own accrediting agencies. Okay, certainly medical schools and those. So accounting's not, or business isn't, this isn't unusual for this particular situation. So all of those are separately accredited. One of the things you have to realize, and this is sort of informational, and let me back up and say, anytime you have a question, please stop me. I'm used to people stopping me, and so I can probably go on. This is how it works. You have the Council of Higher Education and the U.S. Department of Education. And basically what they do, those two entities do, is say, this is a good, we recognize this accrediting agency. They can look at, and they look at what they're doing, what their peer reviews are, those kind of things, and say, yes, it is, and no, it's not. Keeping in mind that most universities are regulated by regional accrediting bodies. Universities, in order, most of them, to get federal funds, have to be regionally accredited. And there are 6 regional accrediting bodies. We'll talk about those in just a minute. But they accredit the whole university. They are not just interested in business. They're not just interested in nursing. They're not just interested in engineering. They look at the whole body. And we'll talk about sort of some of their criteria in just a few minutes. With programmatic accrediting bodies, okay, they look at particular programs such as business, such as engineering, such as nursing. In business, basically, you've got a couple of different levels of this type of accrediting body. You have accrediting bodies that are business colleges that are accredited just at, or not just at the business college level. And then you also have accounting programs that are accredited along with those. You can't, generally you can't be accredited as an accounting program unless you have a business accreditation also, okay? There's, as far as I know, and I haven't, AACSB just changed a lot of their rules and I haven't seen it coming down the pipe. Accounting is actually the only separate program that does have separate accreditation. Management doesn't, CIS doesn't, those kind of things. So we are the only ones right now. So you can have several levels of accreditation, and this is the way it goes. I realize it's sort of hard to see in your setup. Yeah.
Some of the new colleges that are showing up have, say they are accredited, but when you go to look at their accreditation, they're accrediting themselves. How do you get around that? This is in particular in the accounting field.
How do you get around it? Or how they are getting around it?
Yes.
I don't know how they're getting around it, and that's part of the issue. And one of the things we're going to look at a little bit later on is actually the Better Business Bureau has put a red flags list together for us. And one of the things is, who are they accredited by? And a lot of times you'll go on, to answer your question, you'll go on their website. The The website says the school is accredited. The problem is you can't find out by whom they are accredited. And that becomes a real issue. And it's sort of like anything else. If you have to look for it, then you need to be suspicious. Okay. So, but what we've got here these are the regional accrediting bodies. You've got the Middle States, New England, North Central, which is where I am in Colorado. I'm not sure where Kitty is in this. Are you North Central?
No.
Okay.
We're the Western Association.
Oh, okay. Northwest, Southern Association, and then the Western. Keeping in mind, however, that all of these are different, okay? Some of their accrediting standards are much more stringent than others. For example, with the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, or what we call SACS, and generally that's in actually the southern part of the United States, their rules for accrediting universities are much more stringent than the rules for North Central. Okay, so you can't even say, well, they're regionally accredited. You still need to look at those particular situations also. So looking at that, let's look at just,
Karen, just
yeah, sure.
I don't know whether am I smart enough to turn this? Yeah, I did it. I'm on. For those of you who have international candidates, you may find that some of your foreign universities are actually accredited by one of these 6 accrediting associations. I taught at a university in the Middle East that's accredited by the Middle States. And so some of, and therefore, when they transfer their credits, you will at least know, when you're evaluating the credits, you will at least know that they have been at some point reviewed by the same organizations that's reviewing all the universities in continental United States who are accredited by the Middle States.
These are some of the evaluation criteria, and these are just a general. What we did was the 4 members of the committee put together, went in and looked at the 6 different regional accrediting agencies, and looked at some of their criteria, some of their standards. Basically what you're looking at is whether or not, now keep in mind this is at the university level. It's not anywhere near the program level, it's just the university level. Clearly defined mission and goals, strategic plans, integrity of generally the faculty is what they're talking about here. Institutional leadership, how well that's being taken care of. Some curriculum, keeping in mind that very seldom does a regional do a very deep dive into the curriculum of any given program, simply because they're looking at the university, they're not looking at any particular program. SACS does probably a better job in my experience. I don't have experience with all of them, but a better job than a lot of them do. Adequate resources in terms of money, faculty, physical resources, and then student services. And they're doing a good job as far as admissions, retention. That's something that's really, really important, and keeping in mind that the state regulators, the state offices of higher education have really gotten into this, and one of the things they're really asking almost any university for, particularly any university that they're giving funds to, and certainly the federal government has gotten into this, they're very much into admissions and retention, and certainly assessment of learning. So there's retention has been very large over the last, how many students are you keeping, how many students are you graduating, those kind of things. And then certainly assessment of learning is very important. Keeping in mind though that the criteria for these are very, very different. For example, and I keep going back to SACS and North Central because those are the ones I'm most familiar with, but Kitty can talk to this also. For SACS, basically what this means is the faculty has to have a degree, and generally speaking, if you're going to transfer classes to and let's talk about community colleges versus four-year institutions or baccalaureate or master's granting institutions. They both levels are accredited by these regional accrediting agencies. The difference being the criteria that they use. With the SACs, for example, any course that's going to be used at the baccalaureate degree from a community college has to be taught by a master's degree person that has at least 18 hours in the accounting or management, whatever it happens to be, okay? So you are getting somebody with a higher education teaching these classes. On the other hand, with another one of the regional accrediting, what it says is that the instructor, the faculty member, has to have a degree one level higher than the course they're taking, which means that if I'm teaching a course that goes to an associate's degree from a community college, all I need to teach that course is a baccalaureate degree. So the level of requirements are different among the regional accrediting agencies, and unless you read the standards, and some of the standards are very, very long, and I realize you probably don't want to do that. A really good source for this is somebody at a major university in your different states, and those are the people that actually know about this. They also all universities have people that are in charge of this, so they can give you this information. But this is their criteria when they're looking at, and again, they're at different levels. With the programmatic accrediting agencies, and the major ones are here, at least the ones I know about, the AACSB, the ACSBSP, the IACBE, and then EQUIS, which is the European, which is what Kitty was talking about. The AACSB generally is the oldest and right now the most prestigious of the programmatic accrediting bodies. They're international right now, at least when I was looking on their website. They have around 700 international universities and about 170 accounting programs internationally that they're actually accrediting. So they are fairly specific in what they do. They come in every 5 years and do a program review. The ACBSP is more specialized. They do a lot more private institutions. Mostly AACSB are public institutions. Most of the ACBSPs are private institutions. The IACBE is the newest. It was actually started by the same gentleman that put together the Association of College Business Schools and Programs. The last one here, EQUIS, is the European Quality Improvement, and they are obviously across Europe and are actually thought to be very, very good as far as an accrediting agency. And in fact, on their website, and that's how I got to know them as much as anything else, they've got a heavy emphasis on business school levels of internationalization. And it says on their website that all EQUIS schools seeking AACSB accreditation have been EQUIS accredited. However, the opposite is not true. Not all AACSB schools trying to get EQUIS accreditation have been accredited. So they are very stringent in what they're actually trying to do. Some of the criteria here, certainly strategic management. How well, and looking at sustainability and looking at where you're going to be 5 years from now. Do you have the resources? Do you have the faculty? And where they're very into mission driven here. So that's the nice thing. If your mission is research, then that's how you are actually evaluated. If your mission is teaching, then that's the way that you're evaluated. And so if you're a regional university, that's who you should be serving. So they're asking you to identify those missions and do your strategic planning based on who those people are. So that's part of it. Participation or stakeholders, very much into whether or not you're getting input from other places. And I think this is particularly important in business. And I really appreciate it in accounting because it really forces us and gives credibility to the professionals that we bring in to help us with our programs and with our students. So that's something I think is really, really important. certainly out. Learning and assessment, absolutely one of the most important aspects of accreditation. Are our students learning what we intend them to learn? Certainly the strategic management deals with whether or not we have identified the relevant issues, but whether or not they're actually learning it. And so they do this at the curriculum level and with the faculty. So they've done a really good job of that. Be aware that a school that's regular program, their in-class face-to-face program, is programmatically accredited, does not necessarily mean that their online program is also accredited. There are several universities, and with very well-known universities, who now have online programs. And one of the things about accreditation is that the school can decide which programs to exclude. Okay? So, for example, the University of Northern Colorado has a joint program with our CIS program and a computer systems combined degree, and we say we can't control what computer science is doing, so we're not going to try to accredit that particular program. So we exclude that. Keep in mind that these larger universities can actually exclude their online programs, and many of them have. Be aware of that, and what happens is you can take a class in their online program that cannot be transferred to their face-to-face program. So that's one of the red flags if you're looking, not to say that they're not good, not that, I'm just saying that's an issue. Yeah?
How do they appear on transcripts? Are they online versus non-online?
Generally speaking, they have the total online program has a different name. Okay, so it'll use the basic name of the university, and then it'll have a sort of an addition like global program or something like that. So you have to be pretty careful, because it could have your major state university's name on there, and then the second line says global, program or whatever it happens to be. But the transcripts look exactly the same. It's just the titles of the programs that you have to look for.
How do we tell then, we have to go, how do we tell, for example, the global program, how do we tell that is non-accredited?
You have to go look on their website, because it's not going to be on the transcript.
But they will tell you on their website that it's non-accredited?
Yes.
They're required to.
Yes. Yeah. You have to hunt for it, though. And the problem here, and I sort of go back to, I guess I've been on the board too long, but the public interest here and public protection, and we have calls all the time. Well, I've taken classes at X, will you accept them? And no, we can't accept those. Why not? They're AACSB accredited, and well, the school is, but their online program is not. So, and we can't accept them either.
And that doesn't mean they're not quality program or
No.
not quality class. What it means is if your state law says it has to be from an accredited school and you haven't defined accreditation any more than accredited, then you've got a problem in accepting those credits.
And this evaluation, they were talking about problems with evaluation of these courses, and we certainly have problems with foreign evaluations, but it's getting to the point where we're having trouble with domestic evaluations also. Don?
Kind of getting back to online courses. The 150 hours.
Yes, sir.
We'd like to have, in Washington, when we talk about adding substance to the additional 30, there are some education institutions that offer the record review course for credit. So if I'm a student and I take it for credit, it qualifies. If I take the exact same course through record directly, it doesn't qualify. And so the question is, as we go out and try to meet students and let them know about the state board, it would be nice to make a recommendation of substance. Are there any institutions that offer that course online same course.
The
Or
Becker,
is there-
the Becker course, is that what,
Yeah,
or something
Becker
similar?
Or some CPA
Something,
review course.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure there are, but I don't know them.
Okay.
Yeah, there are several of them.
And then the second question is, if we were to change board rules and say, you take the same course that's offered for accreditation, we have a substantial equivalency issue. Right?
Well, you
If your
do,
state law
absolutely, and
Yeah.
some of the boards have said we will not take any review courses. It doesn't make any difference whether it's offered by Becker or whether it's offered within the classroom. But some boards don't have that rule, so that's something that you need to be aware of. Keep in mind, this is an example that happened just recently, and a new university contacted NASBA and asked if NASBA would release CPA results to this particular university because this university wanted to give credit to accountants, give classroom credit to accountants for passing the CPA exam. So somebody emailed me and said, "What do you think about this, Karen?" And I suggested that we ought to talk about it because I really didn't want to put that into an email. So, yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm following this. If it's a major university and they have an online program that's not accredited by one of these, by a regional.
Now, they would be the university as a whole is accredited by the regional, so it would be regionally accredited, but not at the business level.
But is the online still approved by the Council on Higher Education Accreditation at the U.S. Department of Education?
If it's accredited by one of those 6 agencies, yes.
By one of the 6 underneath. So if you're just by virtue of being accredited by the federal government, doesn't mean you're really accredited for our purposes.
Right.
You have to be accredited by one of these other.
Well, in the way the UAA...
Actually, you're not accredited by the federal government.
Yeah.
The federal government is simply saying that if you want to get student financial aid or federal grants, you have to be accredited by one of the 6 regional accrediting associations. And I think it is those 6 regional accrediting associations that most state boards meant when they put into their state law that you have to graduate from an accredited school. I think that's what they actually meant, because back in the days those state laws were originally written, we only had the 6 regional accrediting associations. So you're not accredited by the federal government. They simply say you can't get student financial aid and you can't get federal grants and other kinds of financial aid or from the federal government unless you are accredited by at least one of these 6 regional accrediting associations.
I'm trying to make sure because I got an online religious organization that sent me the documentation that they were accredited by the Fed.
You be very, very careful when they say they're accredited by the CCHE.
Okay, so, and then they said, well, we're accredited by something, the denomination, plus it's not even a real denomination, it's accredited by this, whatever. And then, like you said before, when you start breaking it down, it's the same institution accredited themselves.
And what they probably mean when they say they're accredited by the federal government is that their students are eligible for federal aid in some way, and somehow they've gotten themselves eligible for federal aid.
This is the UAA rules, and this they have level 1 through level 4 accreditation, and basically level 1 is that the university is accredited by a regional institution, and that the business and accounting programs are accredited by one of the programmatic accrediting agencies, AACSB or one of the others, okay? Level 2 is that the university is regionally accredited by one of the 6, and that the business school itself is accredited by AACSB or one of the other programmatic accrediting agencies. Level 3 is that the university is accredited at the regional level, so there's no separate business accreditation. And then there's level 4, which says no accreditation. Now, that doesn't mean they aren't accredited by another agency, because like I said, the CCHE, I actually was going to put all of the accrediting agencies that the CCHE and the Department of Education, but there was no way I could put them onto one of these because there's hundreds of them. There's private institution accrediting agencies and accrediting agencies for massage therapy schools and cosmetology schools and reflexology schools and all of the other schools that you could possibly want. But so your accrediting agency, you can get on the CCHE, the website, and see if it's there, and it probably is, but it's not. But like we were talking, like Kitty was talking, these 6 that we have listed here are generally what most boards are talking about when they say accredited. And some of your rules may reflect the UAA rules of levels also. Okay. But I think it's a real issue, and I think and one of the reasons we wanted to bring it to you because there is a lot of confusion about what accreditation actually means. Okay. Let's see, going the wrong way. Now, talking about online learning, and keep it in mind, there are so many models for online learning that, generally speaking, this is the Department of Education's definition, a program for which all required coursework for program completion is able to be completed via distance education courses that incorporate internet-based learning technologies. So but considering that, you can have a totally online program, and that's some of the ways that colleges are going. Other ways are certainly hybrid courses where part of the time you meet in class and part of the time you do your work on the internet. They have flipped classes now, which is a little bit different. Some of your readings and those kind of things, some of your class lectures, short class lectures are on, you get them through the internet or through some kind of learning software, but then you actually have class every 3 days or every 2 days, however you're going to do it. And that's where you do your case studies, that's where you do your problems. So there's all different kind of models for this.
Almost every university is starting to do some sort of experimentation with online learning. For example, the school I came from, we're now offering at least one section of Principles 1 and Principles 2 online. It's totally online. But when you read the transcript, you will not see that those 2 courses were taken online. So the degree that comes from Idaho State University says they have a degree from Idaho State University, and it never mentions and it shows intermediate Principles 1 and Principles 2 as in a grade, and so it does not say that these were taken online. They have the option of taking of that one section online or any one of the face-to-face sections, and you will never know because the degree comes from Idaho State University, and the transcript indicates that they took it at Idaho State University, and you don't know.
Okay. Keep in mind that 10 years ago, approximately 34.5% of the schools were offering some kind of online program, or there were 34.5% online programs. Today, 62% of the colleges and universities are offering full online programs. Okay, so the issues that I have, and I'm kind of like Ken, I'll just go ahead and say it. The service is, the rationale for these online programs, if you ask almost any school, will be that they're trying to address an underserved population. We had in Colorado, we dealt with this with the community colleges, and they said that one of the reasons that we needed to let them do what they wanted to do was because they had all of these students down in southwestern Colorado that couldn't take regular classes. And the issue, however, was that they didn't have classes down there either. They were giving them to them on an online situation. Part of the issue here, and I certainly think this is the way it's going. I wouldn't suggest that I don't. But I think that in education there needs to be a lot more research. There's very little research on how well these classes are actually working. There's very little research on who actually does well on online and who doesn't do well on online. I mean, intuitively you can say, well, an 18-year-old's probably not going to do very well because they just don't simply have the self-discipline. However, a 35-year-old stay-at-home mom might do a really good job. There's been a lot of articles on how to do it, but not necessarily any research on whether or not it's actually working.
Well, one of the things, going back to the accreditation, when both the regional accrediting associations and for those of us who are AACSB accredited, when they come in and look at us, they look at auxiliary services. So the on-campus student has to have access to full library services. They have to have access to full student services, tutoring services if they need them, all of those things that go with a bricks and mortar university. And we're evaluated, a part of our evaluation is on, are those available to the students? If you're looking at the students in the online program, they obviously do not have full access to the same sorts of auxiliary services that the bricks and mortar attending student has. Now, how important those are to their educational process, I don't know. But that's one of the things that many of us are looking at the online and saying they don't have that support system, they don't have those auxiliary services. And so an online program is just simply not going to have it.
Yeah.
Do you know the percentage of schools that do their online programs in-house versus outsourced?
No, I don't. And it's really hard to tell, but that's a really good question. I'm going to show you in just a second. The U.S. News and World Report has actually done a little bit more deep dive into this, and so maybe that'll give you a little bit of a clue about where this is going as far as online. U.S. News and World Report.
I think Ron has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say that research that you're talking about earlier that hasn't been done might be a great proposal for next year's board meeting about something like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like I say, there's been a lot of research on does this method work well in online, but there's been very little research done on who does well. And you can talk about it intuitively, but researchers don't like, and they like hard research. So, okay, all right. Okay. U.S. World News suggests that they looked at online programs, and now these are master's programs in business, and basically this was the criteria that they used for ranking the ones that I'll show you in just a minute. When they talked about student engagement, they talked about graduation rates, and that's one of the issues with some of the online programs is that they have lots of enrollment and very low graduation rates. Program level accreditation, and that goes back to whether or not the business school or the accounting program or engineering or nursing. And there's some online nursing degrees now, which is sort of a scary thing. Class sizes, best practices, retention rates, and very important, time to degree. Is it actually taking you more than 16 weeks to get a bachelor's degree? Okay, so that's an issue. GMAT scores, and again, this is for business programs, MBA programs. GPAs, acceptance rates. What about employees and employer sponsorships? They're asking that question. A lot of the MBA programs require experience, prior experience. They don't let you come in just right out. So those kinds of admission selectivity. Another thing that they're looking at when they're doing, it's part of their criteria, is the faculty. Are the faculty properly trained? Who are the faculty? And I know that in the best online programs, it's not just whether or not you have a PhD and you're academically qualified to teach in your area, but have you had any training on actually teaching online? Because it's a whole different ball game teaching online than it is to get up in a classroom and actually teach. And can you do it successfully? So they're looking at that. And certainly peer review. So they're also looking at things like student services like Kitty talked about, but one of those issues is student debt. How much are students, what kind of debt levels are students coming out of these programs with? So that's been an issue.
Karen,
Yeah.
can you explain the percentages again? I'm sorry. So 28% student engagement, is that equal to a 28% graduation rate?
That's, if you'll add those percentages up, they add to 100. That is the ranking that they were, the weight they were giving to them in the evaluation for the list that comes up next. But one thing I want to mention here is you guys are not the only ones who are having to deal with this. We at university level are having to deal with PhD programs online. We put out a call for new faculty, and you get 14 applicants who all have PhDs that were totally online programs. So we're having to find a way to deal with, you know, we say you have to have a PhD, but we don't say whether it has to, and of course, we discount the online PhDs, although some of them may be very good. So we're going to have to deal with it too as faculty at universities in our selection of our faculty.
Does that leave you open to discrimination?
I don't know. Right now, we just discount it, you know, emotionally and mentally.
Most it depends on your school, but most of them give the qualifications up front, and they'll say AACSB.
The accredited schools, and most of
Yeah.
these online programs are not. Yeah, I think most of us do say if a PhD from an AACSB accredited school. Yes, sir?
Do they look at NASPA's school report for the candidates that pass these,
Does who look at it?
the people that are evaluating?
Oh,
No.
the AACSB, well, we just went through it at University of Northern Colorado, and they absolutely did look at our pass rates on the CPA exam. We have separate accounting accreditation, so that was something. And I really think that even if you have but if you have business accreditation, that would be something you'd put in your report. So yeah, they absolutely do look at that. With the AACSB, assessment was really their byword. Continuous improvement was their byword up until the last year. Now their impact, you know, are you having an impact on the school, on the students, on in research, and in the profession that you're in. So they have really embraced that Pathways Commission mindset as far as that goes. So, yeah. But this is what they're looking at when they do the rankings. These are the 10, now these are graduate programs, okay? They aren't undergraduate programs, but this is from U.S. News and World Report. So, pardon? Yeah, well, they let some people in there. Okay. So these are some of the better ones that have been. And now, keeping in mind though, again, I'm going to warn you that, and I don't know about these schools, but you can have a very well thought of university that has an online program that they have, and it's not that it's maybe not a good one, but they have not gone through the peer review that they're asking everybody else to go through. So you have to just be careful is really what we're suggesting here. This is from the Better Business Bureau and from the CCHE. These are some red flags, and some of these we talked about when they talk about diploma mills. Claim accreditation, but you can't find their accrediting agency. And just because they are, say, the CCHE, find out who sanctioned by the CCHE they're accredited by. Okay, and again, sometimes it's really hard. And you can call them and ask them and see what they tell you. I mean, you know, that's the issue. Little attendance required. Okay, you don't have to come to class. You don't have to, you know, if you just take tests, that's all you have to do. Okay, that should be a red flag to you. short time to earn a degree, full bachelor's degree in 16 weeks. Okay? I mean, you know, it's, and you can see it because we give credit. We give credit for everything that you've done. Here's where your experience degrees go. There's the University in Texas who has an MBA program, and you don't have to have a bachelor's degree to go through that MBA program. Okay, and it's a very well-known university, but that program is not accredited. But they don't tell anybody that, and then it says you have an MBA from this really well-known school. So very high or very low are just flat fees. We'll give you a degree in 16 weeks for $75,000, okay, or $50. So be aware of that. They don't have anything but a box, a post office box. And I will say that sometimes it's really hard to find the contact information. I mean, I tried to find contact information for Southwest Airlines and couldn't find it. So it doesn't mean they don't have a place of business, but sometimes you really have to look. And if there's no place, or there's lots of places, maybe that's another issue. They don't have a list of faculty. Any school that's worth its salt is going to want to advertise who the faculty are. Okay? So this is something that's really, really important. The other thing that I've also seen is that people's names are on the faculty on 4 or 5 different universities. Well, teaching is not a 14-hour-a-week job. I know some of the legislatures think that. But if you're teaching at 4 or 5 universities, how well are you doing? And why don't you have a full-time job somewhere else? Because that's what you're trying to get. Okay? Yeah?
To expand on that, to have an academic conference, these schools will limit somebody to teaching maybe 1 or 2 courses at Northern Colorado, at Nebraska or something, but we don't ask them their aggregate. And some of these people were teaching 30-plus hours. Because it was only 6, but it was at so many places, and that's how you get them listed multiple times. And this person is, oh yeah, I'm only teaching 6 hours for them. And we go, oh, we don't need to worry about you, you're part-time. But they're spread so thin, and it's not violating anything.
Well, and some of the accrediting agencies have minimums on faculty so that, 60% of their faculty have to be fully qualified, and they can use 10% of their faculty that are not actually technically qualified. Okay, so that then that's when they put these people on. They're not really qualified under regular rules, so they're only teaching 1 class, so that goes into their 10%. So that's another issue. We also had on the state board, we give in Colorado, we give credit for teaching new courses, so that if the first time you've ever taught Intermediate 2, you get some CPE credit for that. Well, this one gentleman came in and said that he had taught 15 new classes in a year. And I'm on the board, and I was the only educator on the board at the time, and I said, if he's doing that, we've got a problem, and he should get another job because he's working way too much. Foreign universities, the other one is names similar to well-known universities. So you need to be really careful of that also. And then always, if they're coming up on your pop-ups, there might be an issue. And I will say that when I first got into academia years ago, we didn't advertise. That wasn't something that we had to do because it was a privilege to come to the university, and we were pretty snobby about that. Okay? Now, and partly because of some of these programs, we've had to start advertising. So just because you're advertising, but beware of the ones that pop up continuously and some of these others. Just like everything else in fraud, one red flag's maybe not an issue, but several red flags are something that you need to worry about. Do you want to say something?
Do I want to say anything?
I don't know.
I think we said it all.
Okay. All right. Some of the issues are the program evaluation issues, course acceptance, and then another one that's coming up are the MOOCs that are free online that are being offered by some of the universities, and how are we going to deal with those in some of the different issues. Okay. Questions? Yeah.
Is NASBA putting together some type of database to help the states, or, I mean, it's...
Not at this point, they're not.
You know, a lot of the work is done by clerical staff who do a fantastic job. What resources we have to take back?
It's become an issue, and I was in, and I'm sorry, I can't remember which meeting I was in during this time, and they were talking about the issue not only of foreign evaluations, but of evaluating some of these online programs, and so domestic evaluations too. So at this time, I don't believe NASBA's done that.
A database of what?
Institutions.
Institutions that are accredited or?
Like, and ones that you've had problems with, that states have reported problems with, or anything like that?
Like an ALD? No, we haven't.
explored that at all. That may be, I'll write that down is that a suggestion you want us to take back?
Yeah, we can, absolutely. And keep in mind, you can find out, if you can't find it on the school's website, you can go to the accrediting agency's website, and they will always have a list of schools that are actually accredited by their accrediting agencies.
A word of caution on that. When you go to the AACSB site, they have two lists you need to look at. One list is members of AACSB, and that will include all the schools that are actually accredited, plus all the schools who want to go through accreditation at some time in their future, so they become members, so they can go to the meetings and begin to, and everybody does it. I mean, in terms of if you want to be AACSB accredited, you join. And you go to the meetings for 4 or 5 years to find out what you need to do before you have your first visit for a review. But then they have a separate list that's called ACSB accredited schools. So just because they say that they are a member doesn't mean they're an accredited school. I don't know about the other websites, but that's true on the ACSB site. Yes, John?
At least one thing, if they're trying to be a member of AACSB,
They're trying.
they are regionally accredited.
Yeah,
They have these other,
right.
they have potential. And
Yeah.
so it is a decent program
Right.
that might be able to move up.
To get
So it's-
programmatically accredited,
Yeah.
you have to be regionally accredited. So they
Yeah.
are. But you can go on the regional websites also and get a list of schools that are regionally accredited. So that might help you also.
But if nothing else, one of the things you need to do is look at your state laws to see what it says besides accredited. You know, what does that really mean? And you as a board need to talk about, what do we mean in our state law when we say accredited? Do we mean the regionally accredited? Do we mean programmatic accredited? What do we mean by accredited?
Would your answer be at least be regionally?
At least, in my opinion,
At least.
yes, well, in my opinion, that's what they meant when they wrote, because when they wrote these state laws years and years and years ago, we didn't even have AACSB, so we didn't have programmatic for, at least for business. So I think most state laws that did envision regional accreditation.
That was before my time. Yeah.
Karen, I'm an old lady. I've been around.
I'm from Illinois, and we have the same regulations that most states do, regional accreditation. But we were approached by a school from St. Louis that is a private school accredited by a national association, the Accrediting Council for Independent Colleges and Schools, ACICS, and of course, the president of the college called me and asked me about, one of his students and everything, and I explained to him that we don't recognize that program. But I got to looking at that particular accrediting group, and I guess it's a fairly large accrediting body for for an awful lot of the independent colleges. I was just wondering if any of the states actually recognize that organization.
I I don't know if anybody I don't know. I know in Colorado, if you don't meet one of the three, you have to be regionally accredited minimum, and that we will look at on a case-by-case basis on anybody else. And we do. We have some very good private institutions that aren't. It's just that, and you can sort of, and where I teach also, we say AACSB accredited, but we would, as far as I know, Harvard is not, but we would take courses from them. So we do it on a case-by-case basis, and we have a list of schools that we've looked at their output and said that we would. So, but we do it on a case-by-case basis, and I don't know what the other colleges are.
Hawaii law says that regionally accredited or nationally accredited, and the board got that language from some place, and I thought it was from the UAA. So when you say nationally accredited, is that like the national accrediting body for everything in schools? Or
Regionally accredited are the 6 people that we put up there. Then programmatic, and that's a term that they're using, and that's a hard one for me. But the AACSB, which is just for business schools, but there are a lot of other accrediting agencies.
Yeah, but most of the time, if you look at the national accrediting associations, they're the ones you need to be suspicious of, because all of the online programs are accredited by a national accrediting association that they have created.
You have to be accredited by an agency that has been okayed by the CCHE to get federal funding. So that's how some of the online programs, they are accredited by somebody.
But we're using it as a blanket.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you need to be really, yeah.
Yeah, you need to look at what their standards are. You know, how often do they evaluate the schools? What are the standards that they are using? And you can go on any of the 6 regional accrediting associations and download their entire accreditation standards. 26 pages if you don't have anything else to do.
Advise them taking that term out of our law? Just saying.
I'm not going to make it.
Tell you what.
I'm not NOAA, and I'm not making any kind of recommendation. I'm saying that you as a board.
You need to be aware that it's there and how it's affecting your, and then if that's a concern that you have, then that's when you need to deal with it. John?
Alonzo, could you give us a list of what the accreditation rules are for the different boards?
Sure.
Because how many, just say accreditation, accredited versus regionally accredited, or use the full? So we know how many states might have issues like you're saying, that national is lower than regional.
Yeah.
And the phrasing and international kind of floats somewhere else. And it is confusing if you're not in academia. We know the setup, and that's why these two are having this great session.
Well, and I think there is a lot, I mean, it's confusing to us sometimes, and in Colorado, I learned an awful lot this last 3 years when we were trying to deal with our education rules about the differences between accrediting community colleges versus universities versus graduate programs and so forth, and what the difference in levels of criteria were for each one of them. So my ED said I didn't get any CPE credit for this because I already knew all of it. So anyway, it's been we had to do a lot of learning. And the other thing that I will tell you is you may have to educate your state government officials, because one of the things that we had to do is go into the Colorado Higher Education Commission and say, because they were saying, well, we're all accredited by the same regional accrediting body, and they are, but the criteria is different for a baccalaureate institution versus a community college. And we had community colleges that were delivering audit courses and asking that we take that audit course at the community college level.
Most universities a long time ago developed the criteria that they don't take any course from a community college that is offered at their university at the junior or senior level. They will not take them from the community colleges. And it comes back to that educational level of the instructors.
Right.
And that's the primary reason we don't do it.
Because when you have a bachelor's degree person teaching advanced or audit or some of those, it's an issue.
And that doesn't mean that the instructors themselves are not good. It generally means that the research and the other things that go into teaching the class, instructors who can actually bring to the table the research that's been offered, that's out there in that field, and the new developments in that field, generally are not present. Generally, that's a supposition, but generally are not present in the community college instructors.
But in your larger institutions, freshmen and sophomores usually don't see anybody but a graduate assistant until they're juniors.
I will not argue with you on that one. That's why I teach at small schools, generally.
But generally, those aren't your upper level classes either.
And they're graduate students in a PhD program. They already have a master's degree, and most of them already have business experience, because most PhD programs won't take you until you've got at least 2 years of business experience. So they are qualified people that are, but yes, that's why I don't choose to teach to the University of Washington. I have students who transferred from the University of Washington and said, "You're the first instructor I ever saw. I've never had anybody but a graduate student for an instructor. It's nice to have a real teacher."
Clarification, I graduated from Idaho State.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
The fact that a community college course is quote-unquote transferable to a four-year institution and shows up on that four-year institution's transfer, can that provide some assurance to the board that it is an acceptable course?
If the school is properly accredited, I would say yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll generally take any course that's from the 1 and 200 level. And like in Idaho, we have the legislature has inflicted upon us that there are 2 junior colleges in the state, and we have transfer agreements with them, because the State Board of Education believes that we should, we're all Idaho educational institutions, so we work with them to be sure that the quality of what is offered in the Principles 1 and Principles 2 classes. In fact, one of the schools actually comes to us and says, "Here's our curriculum. I want to look at, or here's our syllabus. Let's look at your syllabus." And so we're pretty sure that the quality of that they're getting is coming into us is okay.
Do you think every school is doing that? Can I rely on the university?
No. Yes, you can rely on.
Probably on the University of Hawaii, you can. Yeah.
Yeah. Any four-year institution that is accredited itself is not going to take credit from and give credit for a transfer course that doesn't meet their own criteria. They do their own evaluations. Yes, if it's on their transcript, you can pretty much rely on it.
I'm sorry?
Would that be true of the online classes when you were talking about the online classes showing up on the transcript?
We don't accept most of those online classes.
What if it's from Newark and Village? It's from Idaho State.
Yeah.
Shows up, we can be assured that it's.
That there has been some review of the instructor, the instructional methods, and the material that was in the course, that it's the same material they would have gotten, and the exams are the same. So
John?
So Kitty, if one of the community colleges in Idaho is teaching online, you will still have to take those because it's from
the College of Southern Idaho or the College of Northern Idaho. Yes. But so far, we've had no problem because we have really good relationships with them, and the legislature didn't give us a lot of choice. And we take, but if they didn't do very well, we lose them in intermediate 1. Not intentionally.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Alfonso tells me it's time. So thank you very, very much. If you have questions, please let either Kitty or I know. We'll be glad to help you any way we can. Okay, thank you.